Greetings once again, my friends, and live from Retro Central. My name is Peter, and this is another episode of Consolation. As always, I thank you very much for taking the time to check out my work today. I really do appreciate it. The rumors are true. I am back in video game retail. It is not my first foray into video game retail. That happened way back in 1998. One of the things about video game retail that kind of happens is that while you're working in the store, there are some games that you just can't help but buy. So today I want to be talking not only about the games that I bought during my first few months working for FuncoLand, but also some of the big games of the fall and holiday period of 1998. One example is FZero X over here on the GXTV. FZero X was a game that we had running on one of our demo stations in FuncoLand, and it was a game after playing a little bit of it, I knew that I had to own. The game is a kick-ass soundtrack, runs at 60 frames a second. Even though the graphics aren't super detailed, it's still a lot of fun to play, and easily earns a spot in your library if you can find a copy of it for a good price. But yeah, this was a game that I wound up buying because I got a chance to play it at the store, and I saw it every day, and it's like, all right, I guess I have to own this. Another example of that was Star Wars Rogue Squadron, which came out during the holiday season. Now, Star Wars Rogue Squadron came with the expansion pack, which helped graphics a little bit. It was a RAM expansion pack. That was one reason that I bought Star Wars Rogue Squadron sight unseen. This I didn't even wait for a demo to happen. I just bought it. Having the expansion pack made sense because I knew that other games were going to use it. But the other thing was it was a Star Wars game, and to be honest, I had blind faith in a lot of Star Wars games. Sometimes that came back to bite me, Masters of Terraskazi, but other times I really liked it. The Rebel Assault games, although a lot of people tend to poo-poo on those, I really enjoyed those. The Star Wars games for the Super Nintendo, Super Star Wars, Super Empire Strikes Back, Super Return of the Jedi, while they are ball-bustingly difficult, were still a lot of fun to play. And this game is more vehicle-based, which is really right up my alley. Rather than doing platforming, piloting ships like X-Wings and TIE Fighters and Land Speeders and a whole range of other things, to me was pretty neat. So Rogue Squadron, another game that I bought during my first few months at FuncoLand in 1998. And while I'm talking about the expansion pack, here's another one that's a guilty pleasure of mine. This is South Park, which was published by Acclaim. This is another game that tends to get a lot of flack from video game reviewers and retro gaming fans because the game doesn't have a lot of depth. It can be perceived as annoying, kind of ugly looking from time to time. But to me, because we actually demoed this in store, if you can believe it, despite the M rating, we were able to do that back then. Just the comedy, hearing the characters, seeing the characters from the show on the screen was really neat. And it's a stupid reason, but those damn turkeys and the sounds they I had to own the game just based on that alone. Yeah, it was probably a waste of money, but what can you do? But yeah, South Park was another game that I bought in the holiday season of 1998 because I saw it in the store and I thought that I had to have it. And I'm glad that I do. Here's another one. This is Star Soldier Vanishing Earth, which was published by Electrobrain and developed by Hudson Soft. This is a rather nondescript shooter. Graphically, it doesn't win any awards. Sound-wise, it's not going to win any awards. In gameplay-wise, it really doesn't do a lot new. But what it does do, even though it's relatively proven and relatively familiar shooting tropes, it still does very well. The play controls handle just fine. And the thing to me that really sets this apart from other shooters are the time attack modes for 2 and 5 minutes, which have been in other Star Soldier games. Because I'm an arcade guy, having those 2 and 5 minute sessions to be able to get as high a score as possible certainly puts your back to the wall, doesn't let you make a lot of mistakes. It's the same kind of thing that you see in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and I talked about this a bit in the last episode. You just have 2 minutes, so any falls that you make, any mistakes that you make, any tricks that you don't land in that game, or here, anytime you die, anytime you miss a particular enemy or an enemy formation, or bonus items that can boost your score, then you've made a mistake and you need to start again. And I like that kind of thing. Trying to go for that perfect high score run is addictive for me in and of itself. So that's Star Soldier Vanishing Earth. And the last Nintendo 64 game that I wanted to talk about is one that I don't have in my library, but it's The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. This game is hailed as one of the best video games of all time. I don't agree, but I did wind up buying the game at launch. The catch was that we actually didn't have enough copies of the gold cartridge to sell to everybody who had pre-ordered it. So I actually wound up giving my copy to another customer to satisfy their pre-order, and wound up getting my copy of the game a couple of weeks after launch. At the end of the day, it wasn't a big deal because I didn't wind up liking the game very much anyway. I didn't like the move from 2D to 3D, the automatic jumping, the Z targeting, stuff like that I didn't like. But nonetheless, the game was one of the biggest holiday releases that year and certainly is worth mentioning. It's not only one of the biggest holiday releases that year, but as I said, it's commonly thought of as one of the best video games ever. So it's hard not to mention that game. And yes, I did buy it because we were carrying it and everybody else in the store was buying it, so why not? Peer pressure, I guess I can blame that one on. Then we come to the PlayStation, and the PlayStation, of course, one of my favorite consoles of all time. The very first FuncoLand paycheck that I got, I spent some money on 2 new PlayStation games. The first one being NFL Blitz. I've talked about NFL Blitz in videos in the past, so you know that I love this game, I love this series. The fact that it's an arcade game, the fact that it's an arcade sports game, the fact that it's easy to pick up and play, the over-the-top plays after the whistle blows where you can still tackle people and hit them, Tim Kitzrow's over-the-top commentary, the round-robin feature where you play every team and try to get to the end, or the fact that there's an actual NFL season mode in here, which gives you a new way to play the game. And this really, although graphically it's a step down from the arcade, gameplay-wise it felt very similar, close enough where I didn't play the game nearly as much in arcades after I got this as I did before. So NFL Blitz is one game that I got with that first paycheck, and the other one is Mortal Kombat 4. Now, Mortal Kombat, I am probably in the bottom 1% of game players. I'm one of those morons that don't use the run button and don't use the block button, so consequently I get my ass kicked pretty much every time, unless I'm playing at the easiest level versus the computer or unless I cheat. But still, because this was an arcade game and a midway game no less, it was a game that I felt that I had to own. And believe it or not, I actually enjoyed the game after I got it home. I learned some of the basic moves. Granted, I've lost them from my memory since, but I learned some of the basic moves. There were easy fatalities in the game, which meant that I didn't have to memorize the fatality moves to be able to see them in all of their gruesome glory. And again, the game played pretty well to me. Didn't look quite as good at home as it did in the arcade, but nonetheless, I thought it was very playable and fun. So, Mortal Kombat 4, the other game I bought with my very first FuncoLand paycheck in 1998. Then, of course, we have Metal Gear Solid, which I've also talked about on camera before. Metal Gear Solid is a game that I would not have bought if it wasn't for some convincing from the store manager that I was working with at the time, as well as being able to play it in the store and being able to experience the story and realizing if I wanted to finish the story, I had to buy my own copy and play through it at home. I'm not a very good stealth game player. I really don't like the stealth gameplay style. I'm more of a Twitch action type of guy, so very arcade influenced. So taking time and waiting 10 minutes for a guard to turn around or having to crawl on the ground ever so slowly to not be seen is not my thing. But it wound up being my thing because I absolutely needed to see what character was going to be doing what next in this game. Hideo Kojima and his storytelling antics in this game, just so memorable. Even though the cutscenes were too long for a lot of people, I thought that they really rolled out the story well. And even though the story itself on the whole was implausible, there were so many parts of the story that were based in reality that I thought that was fantastic. So Metal Gear Solid, a game that I bought because my store manager convinced me I should, and because playing the game in the store convinced me that it's a game that I should own. And wouldn't you know it, 3 years later, I wound up, one of my very first professional game reviews was based on Metal Gear Solid 2. So, Metal Gear Solid from 1998, one of the biggest games that year for the PlayStation. The next 2 games are games I have not talked about on camera before, such as Road Trip Vacation 2012, which was developed by SingleTrack and published by GT Interactive. SingleTrack should sound familiar to you. They are the team that developed games for the PlayStation under Sony's first-party company, games such as the Twisted Metal series, Twisted Metal 1 and 2, and Warhawk. So they couldn't use the Twisted Metal license, obviously, because that was Sony, so they had to develop a brand new IP using new characters, designs, and gameplay ideas, adding on to the basics for Twisted Metal, and I thought that worked out really well. Interestingly enough, though, while the gameplay is fun and I do enjoy playing the game, my fondest memory of this game is hearing the Rascal King from Mighty Mighty Boss Stones playing in the background the very first time I played it. I thought that was really cool, and licensed soundtracks to me, eventually they became more and more popular in games in years forward, but hearing a track like that not only hooked me on the band, but also hooked me on the game as well. So, Road Trip, Vacation 2012. And the last game that I wanted to talk about in this week's episode is Spyro the Dragon. Unfortunately, I don't have the Black Label copy anymore. This is the Greatest Hits copy here. Interestingly enough, with Spyro the Dragon, it wasn't necessarily playing the game in store or store employees that talked me into getting the game. It was actually Game Informer's spread on the game that I read in the magazine that convinced me that the game was worth getting. Game Informer, of course, was FuncoLand's magazine that was all about video games. The two were tied like this. Game Informer wound up changing hands from FuncoLand to GameStop when the merger took place. But their spread on the game convinced me that this is a game that I really should buy. I did spend a little bit of time with it in the store to be sure, but honestly, I really didn't need to. This was the kind of platform that I wanted to play. It was colorful, it was easy to move around. I like the flying aspect as well as the jumping aspect. The humor is great. Not necessarily over the top or offensive kind of humor, but just, tongue-in-cheek kind of humor I thought was great. And the sequels were even better than this. Sequels that I'm hoping to pick up at some point in the near future. So Spyro the Dragon, one of the other games that I bought in 1998. 1998, between September and December, was an absolutely fantastic period of time for me personally and professionally. Personally, I was in a new job working with video games all day. I was working with a great team of people. I made friends, and I was becoming more well-rounded. After working in phone-based customer service jobs for a lot of my life before that, working with people face-to-face helped me get over some of my social anxiety, at least initially. And I thought that was really important. And then professionally, although I didn't realize that I was working that hard because I was having so much fun, the fall and winter of 1998 led to me getting promoted and getting my own store with FuncoLand in 1999. My first, a promotion that I wasn't even expecting after a very short amount of time. It was all because I was doing my job. I wasn't necessarily striving to do anything over and above. I just thought that was part of the job. Spending extra time with people, answering questions, helping them with game setup, helping clean their games for them, spending as much time with customers as need be. And that's something that I miss about that time period, is that it wasn't quite as busy, so I could spend 15, 20 minutes with a customer and answer any particular question that they had. And I had the experience and the knowledge to do that back then. I still have a lot of work to do with modern games now because they're not quite my forte like they were back then. But still getting to talk to people about video games as much as I can is definitely one of the coolest parts about being back in video game retail, and something that I enjoy very, very much. Don't forget, my friends, that we are just 8 days away now from Retroworld Expo, which is happening at the Oakdale Theater in Wallingford, Connecticut. It's Saturday, October 3rd, 2015. Tickets are still available. I will be hanging out with the Retroware TV family at the booth. I will be a bit hobbled, but I will be there nonetheless. I am going to have some freebies that I'll be giving away. Plus, I have some instruction manuals and maybe even a couple of games that I'll be looking to either sell or trade as well, as I'm trying to swap some games out of my collection that I'm not playing as much and get some games into my collection that I like to play a bit more. One of those games, I'll let you know, is going to be Tail Concerto for the PlayStation, which is pretty uncommon. So come on out and see me. See the rest of the Retroware TV family. Check out such talent as the Gaming Historian, the Game Chasers, Rue from 16-Bit Gems, Alpha Omega Sin, John and Lance from Retroware, and a bunch of other awesome people. Again, Saturday, October 3rd at the Oakdale Theater in Wallingford, Connecticut. Tickets are just $25 to get in. I hope to see you so I can meet you and maybe even give you something cool. Until the next time, my friends, thanks for watching this episode of Consolation. I really do appreciate it. And until the next time comes, take care.